Hello, Cinth. So this one is about trail renderers. Now, those are little things that make the contrails, and when you are in the example scene, you can test those by dragging stuff around, and you see in general, what happens. Now, and then of course you can hit revert to get it back to its original, but no, you can't. You just have to hit Control Z to get it back to its original position. Um, Now I've got those set up on the fighter and I think the bomber. Yep. And I may have done it on the missile corvette. Yep. Um, but then once we get into any of the other ships, I don't have it on there. Now, trail renderers are uh, they're semi-expensive. Um, they're not the sort of thing that we can abuse too much on certainly everybody's computer. Um, People on weaker computers are probably going to have to turn them off, period. We'll just see. But at any rate, general rule of thumb is that for any sort of ship that's in like squads, of any number of 5, 10, more ships per squad. We need one trail renderer per ship. So despite the fact that we've got like 3 engine things here on the back of the missile corvettes, just one trail renderer is good. And with the really big ships though, um, and this only applies to mobile ships. And in my opinion, I think even the stuff that is kind of mobile, but like the control um, the controllers. I think that even those that are kind of mobile, but not really for you can move them, but you're kind of tractoring them around. They're not like really flying under their own power in an amazing way. I think those can do without trail renderers. So, um, in order to set up a trail renderer, um, you need to basically copy what I've got to start out with here, and it needs to be sure not to go underneath the thing that has the LOD group on it, because we don't need LODs on the trail renderers. And so I'm going to go ahead and do, I guess, the arc here for the moment. This one is such a big ship that I'm cool with this having 4 trail renderers on it because it's got 4 engines here. So, one per thing. So why not? So we've got the arc mesh, arc sizer. Yeah. Okay. So, um, okay. So I can put this under here. And so, um, you just do reset on that to move it on over to the kind of default center of this. Now, these are minor pain to set up, not a huge deal, but you know, you do have to, wind up circling all around them to make sure they're in the right spot. Blah blah. Um, you don't have to do any sort of fancy hookups with it because the game will automatically handle that for you, which is nice. All right. So you do usually want to set the flame trail inside the engine a little bit because there's a transparency gap. So and so the next thing you're going to want to do is actually try moving the ship, and you're going to want to have it both both views open because otherwise you really can't tell what's going on. And okay, so you can see what happens there is that this thing looks ridiculously tiny, which, of course, this was used on a fighter. Now it's used here. So um, the scale does absolutely nothing, because it's scaling the renderer, but not the thing that comes out of it. So there's two things of relevance. Well, the material is the gold one always, and that gets swapped in by team later. So during the game, so you can just always leave it as gold. It doesn't technically matter what you leave it as. And so what you're going to want to do is set this to be, first of all, you've got a width that you get to set, and then there is a time and the min vertex distance. So min vertex distance is how far does this thing have to travel before it drops a new piece of the flame trail. And that means 0.1 meters before it drops a new vertex. And so the faster something moves, um, the larger the min vertex distance can be, and it'll make it a trail that doesn't have like weird gaps and kind of jaggies in them. If you So for the fighter, the 0.1 makes good sense. It may be there was something that's a lot slower, like the arc, that you need to move this to 0.05 or something. But that's one that you have to actually test in the game proper. Now, the width here, um, I'm not sure if this width actually does anything. This over lifetime graph here uh, is the main thing that affects um, the size of the trail over time. And so it's set um, to start out at like 0.2 and then go down to here. So let's see if we increase the overall thing, if it looks like it does. So that's good. So when I move this thing, then the whole thing has a larger scale to it. And this is talking in relative terms. So if I make this 6, now we're at 2, and so forth. So you can see how it starts out bigger and then scales down over its lifetime. And that's how you get this kind of distinctive shape of the trail. Now, that makes some good sense overall, what we're seeing here. But uh, you can also say, how long does this thing last? And the length of time that it lasts when something's in constant motion, um, then that's going to make for a longer trail. When it's something that moves slowly, like the arc, um, for one thing, it would make it leave a shorter trail, but also when it stops, it doesn't have this kind of weird extra hanging around trail that then like slowly disappears, like what you just saw. And so if we down this to like 0.3 for the arc, then we should get a very different result. So this, as you can see, for something big like the arc that stops frequently, you're going to get more along those lines out of it. Now, here's where we come in. We can come and say min vertex distance 0.05. Let's see how this does. And so it gives you a little more constant of a thing when there's subtle movements going on there. And we could say, up the time a little bit, 0.4 instead. So that way it's kind of got this jugging thing coming out, but it's not, you know, uh, ridiculous in how it's, oops. Um, yeah. And of course, the arc doesn't generally move backwards, but if it did, that would be a problem, and it turns instead. Um, okay, so those are the properties that you'll use to set up the flame trails. And feels like this is a little on the outside. It looks like it may actually be. So um, when I move this forward again, that feels like it's more in the middle. Hooray. Flame trail, lower right. And then I could probably just go 7, since this is split evenly down the middle, which is nice. So hooray, symmetry. Yep. And then for the bigger ones, um, we can probably make these last a little bit longer or just be bigger, either way. Um, Having something with like 4 trail renderers on it, that should be pretty darn rare. I mean, I guess some of the Guardians and stuff maybe should have, certainly 2, maybe 3, occasionally 4 trail renderers on them. I mean, granted, you got a Guardian that's one thing versus you've got this whole squad of fighters that's 10 things, but we kind of conserve where we can, I think. But it's nice to be able to kind of put, trail renders like here, here, and here or something, so that you get a distinctive look to the bigger units. And so just testing if this seems right at all. You've got to watch the right pane. So that seems a little bit low. Upper left, go ahead and rename that. And so a little bit low, and it's probably going to wind up being a little on the outside, I mean. And so with this thing, go ahead and set the width to something like 8, maybe, timed to 0.5. And let's see what happens. So we've got that, and it has pleasing, difference to it. And so, the difference between the top engines and the bottom engines, the bigger engines feel beefier. You know what? Let's try these at 10, just to see. Yeah, I mean, that's even cooler. And I feel like at that point we can even make the time shorter instead of longer, so they're beefier but smaller. So we get that. That's pretty cool. So long and thin, short and fat. Why not? Anyway, I'm not going to put flame trails on any of the ships anymore. I'm passing that to you. There's just so many things. And that's pretty much all there is to it. One thing that I do want to look into is that possibly setting the alignment to local. I kind of am curious what the efficiency hit is between the two. We may have to go in and change those later, but for now it's view, which makes it a little bit, I think, prettier probably. Um, but it may also make them more expensive. Um, I'm really not sure on that, but either way, for now we'll leave it at view. All right, thanks for watching.